analyzing deals. Also not the most, I mean, it's challenging, but not the creativity that you need, that you would normally have trying to implement the deal over a couple of years, right? Now you're seeing hundreds of projects that you're barely just getting a few days in touch with, right? But you're not implementing them.
Well, but I mean, I disagree that there.
I don't know what it is. It's my imagination.
It's a different kind of creativity.
Right.
You need to size something up very quickly. You need to figure out whether it works. You need to figure out how to make it work. Mm-hmm. If there's not something there, but we don't just look at deals. So I mean, my function is risk broadly taken. So we look at transaction by transaction. We look at the whole portfolio and how that's doing. We look at the performance of IFC and how that's doing. We're effectively management consultants to the line, looking at how they do things, whether they're efficient, where we can do things better. So my job at this stage is to figure out what needs doing and do it, or mobilize people to do it, which in a way tracks back to exactly what you do in CFS. You have very little formal authority. You don't have direct control over resources, but what you do is you have your perspective and you have your ability to persuade people to do the right things.
Okay, very good. So maybe we can wrap up. I wanted to ask you, I mean, I guess you're almost 27 years at IFC now in counting?
27 years, June 10th, a few days from now.
Correct, almost as long as the history of CFS, 30 years. So I guess at some point it'll be inevitable, the retirement question. What are your plans? What would you plan to do when you retire? Do you have any sort of post-career aspirations, or maybe more gardening?
No.
Palm tree.
My aspirations is to work at some level for the rest of my life. The difference will be maybe at some point the weekend will be when I decide it is, not when the calendar decides it is.
Any hobbies that you could maybe explore that you may not have the time to fully get into at this stage?
There are lots of interests. I mean, one of the things about IFC people is that they usually have lots of interests, and not just the business. I'm recalling a colleague who was in Treasury who had an interest in music theory and simply retired to pursue his interest in music theory. I mean, in my case, I have some athletic interests. I work out kind of hard every day, though my present silhouette probably would not suggest that. But I was an accomplished golfer at one point, and so I probably will try and take that up again at some sort of competitive level if I can. But I've also kept up a lot of contact with my former Wall Street colleagues and have some interest in, more than some, quite a bit of interest in simply continuing my career in finance once I get to the magic time in IFC.
Okay, very good. I don't know, any last words, any anecdotes, memories, anything you want to...
Well, maybe a curious anecdote that sort of illustrates where IFC has come. In early '92, Ed Nassim asked me to go join Arthur Levy after he'd been a few weeks in Ukraine trying to get some mandates. Ukraine had just joined IFC, and it was felt we needed to do something. They had nuclear missiles, so it was a very politically important place.
I just spoke to him this morning, by the way, Arthur. I'm trying to track him down also for the interviews, but go on.
So, I mean, all these things, you're going to the frontier in the Wild West with very poor communication, so you're really on your own. So Arthur had lined up a bunch of meetings with companies, and it was clear to me anyway that all of these things, number one, were far too small for us to execute a mandate. Even if execute a transaction, even if we did, you have the structural problem if your people are based in D.C. that if you're the middleman between a buyer and a seller, and the buyer is much closer geographically and in time zone than you're trying to control the environment. Your ability to control the environment from D.C. is not very good, and clever buyers will simply work around you very effectively. But we had a couple of people there simply in the office, and immediate investment prospects were not very good. Anyway, what Edward wanted to do was to have several weeks pass. He would show up. There would be a ceremony. We would sign some mandates to do these several things. My view